Welcome to chapter 12 of the book of Numbers, a short but very interesting chapter. If Moses didn't have a lot to complain about in the last chapter, Lord, why are all these people, what did I do to deserve this? All these people want all this from me. Kill me if I'm going to have to go through all this horrible period of time. And I'm paraphrasing. Of course, you can go back to the 11th chapter and go through there. But he was complaining. And then the Lord set up the 70 men to the elders to be alongside of Moses to alleviate his distress. Now, if that wasn't enough, he's got his family after him. And it says, and Moses and Miriam, that was his sister, and Aaron, his brother, spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian wife whom Moses took, for he took an Ethiopian woman. Now, it doesn't say you couldn't intermarry with other people, except you couldn't if you were the high priest. In Leviticus 21:13, it says, and the great priest, this one shall take a virgin woman from out of his family. And so certainly Aaron was the high priest. Now you would think if he couldn't, neither could Moses, which would make sense. And then in Leviticus 22:13, it says, and all of another race shall not eat of them, and of them being the foods of the Levites. So priests of the Levites, a person of another race shall not eat of the holy things. Now, Ethiopian was definitely another race. Generally, they're black skin, although they have more of I don't know what you would call it, more of a not sub-Saharan black features, but they're more towards the features of the surrounding nations of the Egyptians and the Arabs, but yet they are black. And so this is Moses took an Ethiopian wife. So now he has Sephora, I believe, was the other wife, and I'm not sure if he left her back with Jethro with his two sons. But anyway, the brother and sister come against Moses, which you might say, well, that's right. He shouldn't have done that. But we'll find out. And they said, well, has the Lord spoken only to Moses? Is he the only person that the Lord cares about, does anything? Well, did he not also speak to us? Now, I'm not exactly sure when she's talking or they're talking about, because it says they said, could be Aaron, and I'm not sure if Aaron heard God speaking, and I don't remember any place about Miriam, and they said that, and maybe, and the Lord heard. So they had that argument. The Lord's spoken to us, and he heard, so puts us on basically the same plane and a level. And the man Moses was exceedingly gentle above all the men being upon the earth. See, now I have a problem here because I can't see Moses writing this and saying this about himself. So I'm not exactly sure who wrote this. It's attributed to Moses, but why would he give himself that type of attribute? It's something that I saw when I was reading this. But the point is, anyway, whoever wrote it, that Moses was exceedingly gentle above all the men being upon the earth. That's quite a statement to make. And here we'll get into the pride versus the gentleness and the humbleness here in a few verses. And the Lord said immediately to Moses and Aaron and Miriam, come forth, you, the three, into the tent of the testimony, and the imperative. Come forth, you three, into the tent. Taking him to the tent. And came forth the three. It doesn't say how he spoke to them, but and came forth the three into the tent of the testimony, and that was the tent was inside of the temple area, the tabernacle, and the tent probably went into the inner the first veil where the incense was in the light lampstand. And the Lord came down in a column of cloud, and it stood at the door of the tent of the testimony. So here comes this cloud, covers it over right at the door in front. And Aaron and Miriam were called, and both came forth, not Moses. And God, he said to them, "Hear my words. If there should be a prophet among you to the Lord, and I will be made known to him in a vision, and in sleep I will speak to him." So if there's a prophet among you, he'll see it in a vision or in a dream. He'll have some way that I will communicate to that person. But not so my therapeutics, my attendant, Moses, therapeutics being the derivative. He is trustworthy in my entire house. And what exactly his entire house consists of, maybe he's talking about the tabernacle and the priesthood and the Levites and so forth, and he's the most trustworthy. So trustworthy and humble, meek. And God says, stoma kata stoma, mouth to mouth. I will speak to him in sight, in front of him, and not through enigmas, not through these other ways. You can that word should be in the English derivatives book. Even he saw the glory of the Lord when the Lord put him in the cleft of the rock, and he went by and he saw the end of the glory of the Lord, not his face. And why were you not afraid to speak ill against my attendant Moses? Why weren't you afraid to say something? If he's done all these things, you better be careful. And anger of rage of the Lord was upon them, and they went forth. And God was really mad at them. And it makes me think of the televangelists today. I would think this would be a good place for them to spout off and say, well, who are you to complain that we have all these airplanes, multiple houses, millions of dollars, and all sorts of wealth, just many televangelists. They probably this would be the number one point I would think that they would bring out. And I suppose they might have a good point. And so if God is working and they do have all of this, who am I to come against them? I personally, I wouldn't, unless I really had a calling by the Lord to do something like that, if I really knew. Now, I see a big difference between these televangelists and Moses. Moses, it says, was a meek man, and the television evangelists I see are far from being meek. They're in your face so much as to you send money. Some of them, one man in Los Angeles, he's passed on, would sit there and smoke a cigar and sit there with a big broad-rimmed hat and the chair and say that he's not going to go any more into the study of the Word until he got $20,000 more in that hour or whatever. And he'd tell the piano player, start playing the piano. And this guy, he was a Greek and very famous. He had a big diamond ring and like a Christian Liberace, if you know who that is. And he started playing the piano. And then money would come in, and if enough came in, then he'd go back and start doing the study. And others get in the face and, and healing and whammo and just stand up there and puffed up like a peacock. And I see that as way, way different than what Moses was. To me, Moses is a humbleness, and God's choice of him was, to me, I see a difference there. I don't see that in these televangelists. And then we have the New Testament where Jesus, the Lord, was teaching the disciples about humbleness and washing each other's feet, which he washed their feet, and he said to do the same thing. So here I believe is a one of a kind, that the relationship between Moses and God was a one of a kind. I don't believe, if you hear the televangelists picking this up and getting in your face to do all these things, that it is necessarily of God. But again, if God is directing that, so be it. But anyway, with Moses and Miriam, the anger of the rage. Now, when you see these two words together, orgi and thimu, some people think the word fume comes from thimu, possibility. That is really mad when you see these anger of the rage of the Lord. That is one of the worst there is. It was upon them, these two people. Boy, can you imagine the rage of God Almighty on you? It would be devastating. And they went forth. I'm sure they did. And the cloud left from the tent, and behold, Miriam became leprous as snow, leprosa. You can add that to the English Derivatives book. Leprous, and it's a leprosa, to become leprous. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. And Aaron said to Moses, his brother, I beseech you, O my master, Kyrie, O master. Now this is the same word as Kyrios, a title. It's also a title for master, and I use it in master if it were, or it could be small l, small o, small r, small d. So if the word was Kyrios, was in the Tetragrammaton, was translated by the translators of the Hebrew into Greek, and they translated the 4 Hebrew letters into Kyrios. I don't believe it was the name. I believe it was a title. That's my opinion, because it says his name was Oon earlier. Oon, tell the Jews, they ask who you were. Oon has sent me, the being one. And I'm not sure what it is in Hebrew. I'll do a little study on that and come up with that. And it'll be interesting, because I know the letters in Hebrew would correspond, if it was especially with a name, to the Greek. If you had a name of Moses, and it was Moisi, and in Hebrew they said Moisi, but you looked and you found the me. Now me is Greek. Me is Hebrew. Me is that? No, me nixi is Greek. I'm trying to think of what mu I think is Hebrew. So if it was mem none, samic ayin, mem. So if it was a mem in Hebrew, and they translated it into m, which looks like an M, it's a me in Greek, then you would know the pronunciation was carried over. So with the first 3 letters, I think, of the Tetragrammaton corresponds partly to the name of Jesus, Jesus. So I'm going to do a little study. I have been meaning to do it, and I haven't done it yet, to go through a lot of these names. And like Alpha, if it was in the Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Alpha, if it was an Aleph and it was translated into Alpha in the Greek, then you would know the pronunciation of the Hebrew. So the Tetragrammaton you should be able to figure out what those 4 letters are and how they're pronounced by how each of those letters are used with proper names. I hope that makes sense. Makes sense to me, and it'll be fun to do. Check it out yourself. But anyway, Moses said, I beseech you, O my master, you should not join sin to us, for we knew not that we sinned. And we did this in ignorance. We were ignorant, begging Moses to do something. Do not let her become as equal to death, as a miscarriage going forth from out of a womb of his mother, and it eats up half of her flesh. Oh, don't let this happen. And Moses yelled out to the Lord, saying, O Theos, O God, I beseech you to heal her. Please. And the Lord, he felt sorry for his sister. And even though she was coming, against, I don't know if so much coming against Moses as the pride swelling up in a person for themselves. Could be that way. And thinking that you deserve more than you have doesn't necessarily mean the person that you're using to get something out of from others necessarily means that you have bad feelings towards that person. It's just that your pride is showing the opposite of the meekness of Moses. It's a dichotomy, two opposites. And the Lord said to Moses, well, if her father in spitting spat into her face, would she not feel shame? Yeah, she would. And so God has basically spat in her face by giving her leprosy, and she should feel shame. And he says, 7 days she shall be separated outside the camp. And after this she shall enter, that is, back into the camp. So 7 days she had to go out and sit with leprosy. And Miriam was separated outside exoderm, outer skin, outside the camp, exoteric. 7 days she was outside, and the people did not lift away until Miriam was cleansed. So there's 7 days now, and then they go again. And after these things, the people lifted away from Hazeroth, and camped in the wilderness of Paran. And now Paran, let me see if I can find that map again. Here it is, over here. The wilderness of Paran. So remember I said that I believe that they came over here to Jebel bin Bishar is Mount Horeb. And it says in the wilderness of Sin. And the name Sin is actually still in that name of that mountain. And then the birds were blown off the sea into the camp, which makes sense. It would be over here because they had already left. I forgot how many days, but they were gone. So now I believe in this period of time they have crossed over and they're going up to Canaan. And they're getting up to the wilderness of Paran, which is right below Israel, which Israel goes here all the way down, sort of like that. And there's the Jordan River's up here. The Dead Sea is here. So now they're going to the wilderness of Paran. And we'll find out more about what happens to these people once they arrive close to Canaan. In our next chapter, the 13th chapter of Numbers, next video seminar. I hope you'll join us in it and continue in God's Word. God bless.